So welcome everyone. We are continuing this morning our study of the founding fathers of Judaism, of Rabbinic Judaism, and this fascinating window we have through Midrash, through other rabbinic texts, into these rabbis, the first rabbis of Judaism who existed in this really interesting period of time after the destruction of the temple, as they work to keep hold of the past, but also be able to innovate enough to give Judaism new legs to survive in vastly different circumstances, without a temple, without a priesthood, without sovereignty, in a sense of feeling that God had abandoned them, but also trying to find a sense of optimism, and of how to live religiously, how to live spiritually. And we've seen all the different types of personalities. We had Rabbi Akiba, we had we had last week Hanina ben Dosa, and we had Rabban Gamliel before, some of the main actors. And today we're going to start a series on one of the actors who's both a giant, but also ends up causing a little bit of trouble within these early days and interactions, but a really interesting story. Another very rich series of stories that are very, very evocative. And so, if Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa was the character who was very otherworldly and didn't care about sustenance in this world, yet his spiritual merit is so broad, his spiritual shoulder is so broad that he carried all of the world with him, according to that source we viewed last time, and had these special powers. Rabbi Eliezer is a different kind of spiritual giant. He is a spiritual giant. He's also an intellectual giant, and has a very strong voice and presence within the tradition and all of these early days as Judaism is trying to find its way. So, anybody have any enduring thoughts or comments from our last session or last few sessions they want to share?
I just want to say hi. I had to jury rig this. I'm very glad to be able to be here, at least for a while. And I thought the last sessions were so compelling that I wanted to try not to miss this one.
I appreciate you taking the time, even being far away. Do you everybody have the text that we need?
Yes.
I have it, thank you.
Yeah, it is new handout. So Dan, I'll send you the new handout.
Oh. Okay.
Oh, I don't have that.
I'm not sure I have it either. Let me look.
I got one from.
It went out yesterday.
Oh no, I have the one from the temple today, and it just says.
Oh, that one should be fine.
No, I don't. It's Eliezer.
Eliezer, yeah.
Looking.
Well, I'm glad you came, Phil, because I knew you wanted to study about Eliezer. So
I don't have Ben Dosa, I don't think. Whatever I have, it's what I.
What do you have, Phil? Do you have?
I have what comes up on the email from the congregation. It says click on for the materials, and it's I've just had it. It looks like it's 221 and following.
Perfect. Okay, so Diane and Nancy, I'm going to send it both to you.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, so it's not been 221 to 226, I think.
You got the right one. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so I just sent it to you.
Okay.
Alan is here in person, and so we're going to start Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus. All right, ready? And let's start number 87.
Rabbi Aha taught in the name of Rabbi Hanina. When Moses went up to heaven, he heard the voice of the Holy One. who has sat engaged in the study of Torah, quoting a law in the name of its author and saying, Rabbi Eliezer says, Moses spoke up, Master of universes, may it please you that this scholar issued from my loins. God replied, by your life, he will indeed be from your loins. Hence it is written, and the name of the one Eliezer, as much as to say the name of that and uniquely gifted one.
So Moses' son is Eliezer, right? So it's one of his
Right.
sons. So, but
So here we have the
Got it.
rabbis
Yeah.
saying, God not only gave us the Torah, but he was sitting there studying the Torah.
I guess he was making them.
And
he's quoting a rabbi.
Moses is quoting a law from Rabbi Eliezer
In the future.
in the future,
Yes.
right? And he says I guess he's saying he's such a great scholar that I want to be his ancestor.
Exactly. Yeah.
And God said, sure.
You got it.
Okay.
It's the it shows you how much the rabbis put emphasis on scholarship for one, that even God is studying Torah, right? And how they elevate it, and how the rabbis tend to also they have this interesting relationship with God's presence, where God's in the Bible, God is all powerful and raining down fire and brimstone. And in rabbinic literature, God becomes a little fantasical, right? God doesn't feel as powerful or real, because I think my own view is that for many of them, the presence of God did not feel as immediate appeared as it did in the Bible, and so it becomes more playful, more fun, and they use the voice of God to make different points. So here the point is how great Eliezer is. So before we even go forward, what does one notice about the name of Eliezer ben Hyrcanus? What kind of name is Hyrcanus?
It's Greek.
It's Greek, right? So he's not. It's maybe like in our days where the assimilated Jews take on. Well, in our days, most Jews have an English name and a Hebrew name, but back then, especially, you could tell who were the more assimilated into the Greek culture by they had a Greek name. So obviously his father, Hyrcanus, is very Greek. Either he's Greek or he's assimilated into Greek culture at the time.
Or maybe it was Eliezer's grandparents.
Or it could be Eliezer's grandparents were assimilated. That's true too. Yeah. Very true. Go ahead, Phil.
What were the beginnings of Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus? At the age of 22, he had not yet studied Torah. His father was very rich and had many plowmen working for him. One day, Rabbi Eliezer's brothers were plowing arable ground in a valley, while he was plowing a stony plot on a hill. Presently, he sat down and wept. His father asked, "Why are you weeping? Are you distressed because you have to plow a stony plot? From now on, you will plow arable land." But he sat down on the arable land and wept again. The father asked, "Why are you weeping? Are you distressed because you are plowing arable land in the heat of the valley?" Rabbi Eliezer, "No." The father, "Then why are you weeping?" Rabbi Eliezer, "Because I wish to study Torah." The father, "But you are already 22. and you wish to study Torah, take a wife. She will bear children for you, and you will take them to school. Nevertheless, Rabbi Eliezer resolved, I will go and study Torah in the presence of Rabban Johanan ben Zakkai. His father retorted, you will not get a taste of food until you have plowed the entire furrow.
Okay, let's stop for a quick second. What do you make of this beginning of this story?
I was, when I was reading it, I said to myself, Al comes from a rich family.
Why is he plowing?
Why is he working here?
No, not why is he plowing, but I was thinking,
Why is he denied?
why, or the father is trying, maybe the father is trying to instill in him a certain set of values about hard work, not just living off his riches, father's riches, or the labor of the father's plowman. But you and your brothers have to go out and earn a living. You have to know what it's like to make money, because maybe that's how the father got rich.
Yeah.
Maybe he wasn't born into riches.
So the father thinks he's doing something good, and he clearly cannot understand his sons. He keeps thinking, well, maybe it's because this isn't. I always in my mind get an image of some kind of Broadway musical when I read this story. I just he has a dream. His dream is to study Torah, and his father just doesn't understand. Maybe you're just, is it because you're hot? Is it because you're plowing in the wrong place?
But it feels like a very fresh story, because I'm sure it's a struggle that occurs in many families.
Yes.
Even today, where, the child, you have those families where the children, maybe it's an Orthodox family and the children reject it.
It's the opposite.
But then here you have the opposite, and the father says no. And then we have the stories where it's the father-in-law who said, or in real life,
right?
The father-in-law says, you go study. I'll support my daughter and you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Well, but the brothers were plowing arable ground in the valley.
Right.
So he was singled out. He had a stony plot.
Mm-hmm.
So they weren't all treated the same.
It's very interesting, all those images somehow those images feel important. Every time I've studied this story, this idea of plowing, and you'll see as we go through the story of what's the land and of plowing the land is a powerful theme throughout this longish story we're going to read. Because the story makes a point of digging deep into this whole idea of the plowing the land. But he's given, at first he seems, as you're right, he seems to have been given a less good land than his brothers to plow in, which sounds maybe more exhausting, more difficult, or less fruitful.
The plowing the land too could be a metaphor for running a blade. When you plow, you're running a blade through a pile of dirt, separating from one side from the other, which is one of the motions in thought when you're studying too. You're parsing one thing from another. You're creating separations in thought. So it may have something to do with that.
Beautiful. And I've heard the whole process of growth, of spiritual growth, as being compared to plowing, because you're trying to plow the earth of your own personality and being, and remove the weeds and get it ready for planting. So it's a powerful metaphor, and his father is completely can't understand why he would want to study Torah, and why did you tell me before? You're 22 years old. That ship sailed. But he's willing to go on. So let's continue unless someone has any other comments. Okay, go
All
ahead.
right, Rabbi Eliezer got up early and plowed a full furrow. But then his heifer fell and broke its leg,
Oh,
saying, "My heifer's leg broke for my sake." He quickly took off and went to Rabbi Johanan ben Zakkai in Jerusalem.
is that in Yavne?
It just leaves me to
How does he
wonder.
get there?
Well, no, I was going back to the heifer broke his leg and he just then takes off to
Left the heifer.
Jerusalem. I mean, he doesn't do anything about the heifer. He leaves it to somebody else. Or he just leaves the heifer there. I don't know. It just seems unsatisfying.
Well, the one, there's some imagery at play here, maybe. When the prophet Elijah is wandering 1,000 or 800 years, 700 years before this, the land of Israel, and he sees Elisha. Elisha is plowing the land for his father, and Elijah comes and puts his mantle on Elisha's back and makes him a prophet. And Elisha says, "What, should I abandon my ox right here, and come and follow you?" So there's something of, yeah,
Okay.
maybe, but I think it's also, he feels it's a sign from God, right? Obviously, that's what he says, because his father said, "No, you have to go and plow," and he's a dutiful son in his own way, right? So he's even from the beginning, he's weeping when his father, but he's not being disrespectful to his father. He's trying his best, right? So his heifer breaks his leg in the middle of all the work after he plowed already a full furrow. So he did his job, and he thinks, well, this is a sign from God that God wants me to move on and not spend my life plowing these furrows. But yes, the heifer, we worry about the poor heifer with its broken leg in the middle of the field.
I worry about the heifer a little bit, but I would point out to Alan that the heifer has broken his leg, and sadly, the heifer will be put down.
Yeah, right. Oh, no,
and-
I have no illusions about what that heifer.
Okay.
But thank you, Phil, for making sure that I know that. Shall I continue?
Yeah.
It is said,
Yeah.
That's my.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Phil.
Go ahead, Phil.
Oh, there's a possible other symbolism here about the it's in the Psalm, and I think it goes back to a verse in the Torah where a Psalm, which because you daven it in every morning, or at least Shabbos morning, about none of his limbs will be broken. Lo nishbara, I think. That's a sacrificial idea, the unbroken man, but the heifer is broken and has to be destroyed. And I didn't mean to explain that to Alan. I was just trying to ease his pain.
Okay, thank you. It is said that day was the eve of Shabbat, and he had tasted nothing from 6 hours before Shabbat Eve until 6 hours after the Sabbath's departure. As he was walking along the road, he saw a pebble in a cultivated field, picked it up and put it in his mouth. When he came before Rabbi Johanan ben Zakkai, he sat down and wept. "Why are you weeping?" Rabbi Eliezer said, "Because I wish to study Torah." "Have you ever studied it?" "No." So Rabbi Yochanan began to teach him the Shema, the Tefillah, the grace after meals, and 2 rules of law every day. On Shabbat, Rabbi Eliezer repeated the prayers and the rules till he memorized them. 8 days he kept at it without eating a thing, until the foul odor from his mouth attracted the attention of Rabban Johanan ben Zakkai, who asked, Eliezer, my son, did you eat anything at all today? Silence. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai repeated the question. Again, silence. By your life, today you will eat with me, Rabbi Eliezer, but I already ate at the place where I stay. Rabban Johanan said to his disciples, as you live, look into the matter. So his disciples went around all the streets of Jerusalem, inquiring at the inns, do you have a guest who is a scholar? The reply was no, until they came to a woman who said yes. They asked, does he have anything here? He has a sack into which he puts his head and appears to suck from it as if from a leather wine bottle. They, show it to us. She brought the sack. When they opened it, they found it full of earth. Then they asked her, has Eliezer eaten anything in your place today? She replied, no. We thought he was eating at his master's house. Thus they realized he had not eaten for 8 days. They went and reported to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who then turned to Rabbi Eliezer and said, alas for you, Eliezer, so greatly neglected in our midst. But I say to you, even as foul breath arose out of your mouth before me, so shall the fragrance of Torah issuing out of your mouth travel from one end of the world to the other. Then Rabbi Yochanan set up regular meals for Rabbi Eliezer, and he was healed. For 3 years, he occupied himself with study in the presence of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai.
So let's stop there. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was a predecessor of Rabban Gamliel, and we'll get to him too. How does Rabbi Eliezer come across to you?
Embarrassed. He's embarrassed to ask for help. He's struggling, and he would die eating earth before he asked any of his colleagues for food. And I'm struggling with that. Is that modesty? I'm struggling with that.
Well, eating and studying and taking in knowledge are very, very much related to each other. And in fact, a metaphor of eating while studying is very, very common. Now, why he's eating earth, and maybe it's the beginning of it. So he starts with a pebble, right? So he puts a pebble in his mouth, and they're very specific about this thing being a pebble. So in the beginning, he doesn't get much in the way of, say, nourishment from his studies or from his eating, which is the same as his studying. And maybe later he begins to eat, people talk about eating honey, that the studies become something like eating honey. And there's some sort of prohibition that if you eat too much of it, you'll vomit. So you have to be careful. Well, anyway, he's not starting with honey, he's starting with dirt. And maybe that'll turn into something very special for him.
But David, the dirt is making his mouth foul, so foul that Rabbi Johanan notices the foul odor coming out of his mouth. I mean, it does not appear to be beneficial, and it doesn't appear that it's actually feeding him. It's not.
No, it's not. It's not in the beginning. And besides, they didn't have mouthwash in those days. You know, if somebody doing the same thing now would be going to Walgreens and getting a preparation. But no, I think this is the beginning. I think the notion of this is the beginning of his eating.
There's a sense also of being driven by the desire to study is so strong, right? We also think about the rabbis are switching the emphasis of Judaism towards study as one of the pillars of Judaism. And in this story, we see how powerful study is. It just drives with Rabbi Akiba too, but it's driving them to forget food. His desire to study, to know, to fill himself with knowledge was so intense and so praiseworthy, right? There's also a pretty interesting meritocracy going on here, because who is he? He's just a man, a boy who came, well, not a boy, he's a young man who's come up to Jerusalem. And Rabban Johanan ben Zakkai is the greatest rabbi, but yet he accepts this young boy and sees his thirst for Torah, and even though he knows nothing about him, is willing to teach him and to bring him in and to give him what's needed and to look after his well-being. So it's a beautiful story. And go ahead.
I was also, I kind of thought about it immediately, but I kind of went back to the story about him plowing the land. And he was given the job of plowing the stony land, and he never said anything. And he wanted to study Torah, and he really didn't say anything.
He cried.
He was really pushed.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, and here, you know, he didn't have anything to eat. He didn't get anything to eat. He didn't ask for anything to eat. So I'm just wondering if he learned the behavior of just kind of putting up with things, not asking for what he wanted or what he needed. And this was just another example of, you know, that learned behavior. And David probably will have something clinical to
but he winds up breaking his leg. That's what enables him to go to Jerusalem. And I thought the school was in Yavne. I didn't. This is before the school is founded in Yavne.
Yeah,
okay.
That's good. Mm-hmm.
So the only way that he can get out of his filial duties plowing the stony ground is by breaking his leg and having the heifer break her leg too. And I've read other versions of the story where he falls down and breaks his leg and the heifer's just fine. Okay, but the point is that he's got to become handicapped. He's got to break his leg. He's got to befall some incident, some accident before they will allow him to go off and study. I mean, so he's useless now for plowing the fields? So they're going to throw him away and allow him to go to Jerusalem to study? I'm trying to wrap my head around this.
There's one of the things I find so beautiful here is the power of wanting to study Torah is causing him to weep multiple times, right? 4 times. The desire he has to engage in study as a spiritual practice is so strong in him that it makes him weep. He's 20s, and he's not 12, he's 20 something, right? He's 22 years old. And he's just taking it all in. It's just a force of nature within him. And when I think about this, it makes me think sometimes, you know, this story is, as Alan was saying, is very fresh. I mean, you go studying in a yeshiva setting in Jerusalem, you still see this. There's some people for whom the study, they just catch it, and it catches them, and they're the nonstop. And I remember once talking to someone who was the son of a very great rabbi. And he was doing what's considered minimum in this community, which is after high school, you do an additional at least 5 years of study in yeshiva. Just that's the minimum. And he was telling me, I always thought that I was really good at Talmud study and I was really driven. But he said when he arrived at his yeshiva, which was a very intense yeshiva with lots of young, and he was partly American, and he said that he just couldn't keep up because there were some of the other students there who slept 4 hours a night, and the other waking hours were just studying nonstop, and they just wake up and they'd memorize, and it's like they were driven by something. And he was more of a balanced person. He was trying his best, but there were just some people who were just totally in it, and just kind of merging with Torah. And so I think a little bit of the book The Chosen here, and which is The Chosen is maybe the other way, but these stories of growing up in one environment, like you were saying, and either going the other way, right? Growing up religious and wanting to explore the outside world, or the opposite. It's a very iconic story.
The studying becomes more intense, I think, if you're denying yourself food. There are other religious groups that do that as well.
It's true. It makes one feel he's completely disconnected from physical life. He's not even aware of his foul breath. He's just totally in this intellectual, spiritual world of Torah and of law, and is completely forgotten his own self within it. And he's being already celebrated, right? It's only been 8 days, and he's already got the greatest rabbi in the land looking out for him. That's quite a
Yeah.
Okay, let's continue.
The other sons of Hyrcanus said to their father, "See what our son Eliezer did to you? He left you in your old age and went off to Jerusalem. Go there and disinherit him." So Hyrcanus went up to Jerusalem to disinherit Eliezer. It is said that day was a festal day for Rabbi Johanan ben Zakkai. All the notables of the city were dining with him, including Ben Tzitzit HaKesed, Nachdamon ben Gorion, and Ben Kalba Savua. When Rabbi Johanan ben Zakkai heard that Hyrcanus had come, he said, "Make room for him." Thus, finding himself unexpectedly placed among the notables of the city, he sat trembling in their midst. Rabbi Johanan ben Zakkai set his gaze upon Rabbi Eliezer and said, "Begin your discourse." Rabbi Eliezer pleaded, "I cannot begin, for I am like a well which cannot bring forth more water than it draws from the earth. So too, I cannot utter more words of Torah than those I have received from you." Rabbi Yochanan said, "My son, you are rather like a spring which wells up and brings forth water of itself. You are like such a spring." Rabbi Yochanan pressed him, and the disciples pressed him. So he arose and delivered a discourse on things that no ear had ever heard before. Rabbi Eliezer's face was as radiant as the light of the sun. Rays came forth from him like the rays that came forth from Moses, so that no one could tell whether it was day or night. Then Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai stood up, kissed him on his head, and said, "Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, happy are you that such a son has issued from your loins." Hyrcanus asked, "To whom is he saying this?" When told, "To your son Eliezer," he said, "Rabbi Yochanan should not have spoken thus. He should have told me to say, how happy am I that such a one has issued from my loins? Then Hyrcanus climbed up on a bench and declared in the presence of the people of Jerusalem, Masters, I came here for no other purpose than to disinherit my son Eliezer. But now all my possessions will be given to my son Eliezer, while his brothers are to have no portion whatever in them. Eliezer said to Hyrcanus, had I sought landed properties, the Holy One would have given them to me. For the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. Psalm 24. Had I sought gold, silver, or gold, he would have given them to me. For mine is the silver and mine is the gold, saith the Lord of hosts. I sought from the Holy One nothing other than the Torah.
A great story, make a great musical, wouldn't it? A great moment of redemption there with his father. And so Ben Kalba Savua is one of the notables. That's the father-in-law of Rabbi Akiba. It's interesting, we get a view of all the world back then. But what do you think of Rabbi Eliezer in this? Again, he's being humble, right? At first, he doesn't want to speak. He doesn't, but when he does, he's unstoppable, right? He's just a beautiful Torah comes out of him in a way that's just, he just has a gift, an incredible gift for Torah. And he both has the intellectual ability, but also clearly something spiritual is happening because his face is just lighting up as he's speaking, and he's becoming like Moses, and everybody there is transfixed. He has that rare gift of having both an ability to speak and charisma and a spiritual kind of a gift as well, and immediately recognized by everyone. He's just so what do you take out of this story? What does one take out of this story? I mean, it's interesting that out of it, who's the winner again? It's the one who studies Torah, right? The ones who are just plowing the land, who are just doing business, are not given great honor in this story. So the message from it is honor, and even the riches ultimately go to the one who devotes himself to Torah.
There's no sense of injustice reflected here to the sons who were laboring away. They didn't have the talent. They couldn't come up with these novelties of Torah in a million years. But they were doing what they thought they were expected to do, indeed what their father required of them. Their father is a strong-willed man and tending to the dogmatic and the absolute way of thinking about things. And so in a way is his son Eliezer. There's no, it seems to me, there's no, the other sons, I don't, maybe it comes up later, I don't know. There's no sense that they are entitled to anything from their father, because his father was now, they set his father on a wrong path, and now his father is punishing them for that. To me, that's also striking.
Interesting. Well, it's some of the others that we've studied are great leaders, but they also seem to have an understanding and focus on other people, a compassion for other people, the way Rabbi Joshua and Rabbi Akiva know to make themselves smaller to accommodate the political intrigue with Rabban Gamliel. With Rabbi Eliezer, we sense none of that. He's just a man on a mission to just fill himself of Torah and share Torah. And it's not that he's not thinking of the others, but that's just not, he's just consumed. He seems to be completely consumed by this thirst for Torah. And he has this incredible gift, as you were saying, both for the memorization clearly, but also for the chidushim. And he's a humble guy, but he's not going around healing other people. He's not going around improving other people's life. He's just an incredible scholar with great things. Almost all the others we've seen already, have many stories of helping other people. So far we haven't seen that.
It's interesting if you compare the Catholic saints to these rabbis.
Yeah.
Very different types of characters. The saints are known for mostly their faith, for their quietness. Some of them maybe not so quiet, but the rabbis are a different breed of cat here. These are characters that are, the intellect is a huge thing for them, and as you say, the spiritual too. Now, as time goes on, you have people like this rabbi who then aren't involved in studying Torah at all. They switch, or they grow up in a culture where this particular gift is put to doing other things. And I wonder what sort of an other thing would this guy be into? Would he be into mathematics? Would he be a modern physicist? Would he be something like that? It's hard to know. But he's obviously got a great gift for thought and a great gift for a thought that doesn't involve sensation.
It's what I sense too from this story, that he has that kind of genius mind, that and we see so many echoes in this story and through thousands of years of Jewish growth of how the best minds did go to Torah. I mean, there have also been so many Jewish servants to humanity, right? Jews who contributed to humanity in arts and economics and philosophy and so many areas. But it is almost an archetypal Jewish story of the Jewish genius whose mind is so big that it can't be contained from where he comes from, and he has to go search out and find the place, the city, right? He's going to the city where he finds those who will appreciate his genius. But it is amazing that his thirst for Torah is appreciated and has a place and is celebrated and finds its in the culture that appreciates that and that doesn't put it down.
I have a question. So
Go ahead.
in the last sentence, when his father gives him all his wealth, the way he responds, is he turning down the wealth? Because he's saying, that's not what I wanted only to study Torah. Or does he accept it? I mean, to me, I'm not sure what that means.
I think I had the same thought, and Rabbi Akiba, when he gets the wealth, he's happy for it, right? He embraces it. Rabbi Akiba does, and he says, I'm happy that my wife now can wear the golden, the gold jewelry because she spent 28 years in poverty or however long it was. But it's kind of left there. It's unsure. Does he accept the wealth or does he turn it down?
My understanding, I'm sorry to interrupt, Rabbi, but my understanding, because I've heard other versions of this story, is that Rabbi Eliezer winds up splitting his inheritance with his brothers because he's that kind of a guy.
That doesn't surprise me. I haven't seen that version, but that doesn't surprise me. He's not as that interested in in that side, which is what he was saying. And what we noticed from the beginning, right? From the beginning, he's just driven by his gift and his love of Torah. So let's read a few more of these ones before we take a break. Would someone else read number 89 for us, please?
You go ahead. 89, Rabbi Eliezer. He is like a plastered cistern, which does not lose a drop, like a flask coated with pitch, which retains its wine. So everything that goes into him, every bit of knowledge, spirit, etc., stays with him. There's no leakage in this guy. Anything maybe you could say when he speaks, that's a form of leakage, but that's an interesting image to talk about him.
It's from the Pirkei Avot, where it has a whole series where it compares different scholars to different. So it's maybe he has one of those memories where I'm just escaping me now. When you remember everything, everything you read.
Photographic memory.
Photographic memory. Maybe he has a photographic memory.
You want to read 92?
Please go ahead.
Rabbi Eliezer said, if all seas were ink, and all reeds pens, and heaven and earth scrolls, and all mankind scribes, they would not suffice to write the Torah that I have learned, even though I abstracted from it no more than a man would take by dipping the tip of his painting stick into the sea. So it's an infinite source.
Really, the sense we get from him, isn't it? Of him, it's the there's the idea that the Torah itself. This is much later, but the mystic, the Ari, he used to teach that the Torah that we have, the physical Torah, the 5 books of Moses, are just the one version of the Torah that our ancestors were able to receive. But the real Torah is the DNA of the universe. It's the essential wisdom, and so the God, or however they were revealed to them, just what they were able to receive in ancient times, and that was a Torah that fit them. But that whenever we study that Torah, we also hook into a process of studying that greater supernal Torah, which is the DNA of the universe. So it's almost what he's saying is that there's Torah is never ending. The more you plug into that process of studying. I mean, it's even the reason we all as Jews study Torah is not only to get in, or other people too. It's not just to increase our knowledge, but it does something to us. It increases our sense of self-knowledge, of knowledge of the other relationships of the world, and opens something up. And somehow Rabbi Eliezer embodies that sense.
It's transformative, they're saying. So that you take in words, you take in ideas, but it does something kind of magical to you. That's what they're saying.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, one of the things about study in Judaism in particular is that it also physically just so broad. There's so many endless books, right? You could fill, how many libraries could you fill with Jewish scholarship? Endless libraries, right? It's so vast. And I remember after studying full time for years already, I met someone, and she said to me, even, I'm not sure why, maybe she was putting me in my place, I don't know, but she said, what is still just a drop in a bucket of everything that's out there. This is even before becoming a rabbi, but there's so much to know, right? Just midrash, you could spend years, the amount of midrash you could study. And I mean, the Talmud is so vast. and all the commentary, the endless commentary on every of our, it's just endlessly vast. And that too is part of the power of it. And that you could just learn, you could study more and more and more and more. And I mean, the ultra-Orthodox, they study, some of them study 12 hours a day, and they still study, and they're not getting to the end of the bucket, because there is no end to the bucket. It's just keeps on going. It's really quite extraordinary. And then, so right, some of the people who've been the most, at least in the traditional circles, most beloved. So Rav Yosef, his name is escaping me right now, who is a Sephardic chief rabbi of Israel, who had a photographic memory, and who was able to remember vast amounts of all of this vast amount of Judaism, and could pull it up just like this in his mind. And so when people asked him halakhic questions, he could draw from things in his mind and obscure texts, and just he held all of that in his mind. And so some of these in the Haredi ultra-Orthodox world, those are the giants, the ones who have that kind of memory and breadth as Rabbi Eliezer. I wouldn't say it's the kind of figure that draws me as someone who I aspire or look to, but in that world, having that vast knowledge and being able to draw from such a vast array of text through your memory is considered to be the height of achievement.
And yet, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Ovadia was I was going to say that he was also, I mean, there's a kind of almost idolatry in quality, which is typical of a certain kind of strain
Sure.
in the followership. On the other hand, I think he was, maybe this is because he was Sephardic, but you can certainly help me on this. He was I think thought to be able to use his learning to issue more flexible rulings that could adjust. Is that correct?
He was considered to be lenient, and he had such
Lenient,
knowledge,
that's the word I meant. Yeah.
he had such broad shoulders that he was able to be lenient, and then people would. He had enough knowledge, and so he had a popular show on the radio where people would ask him halachic questions, and he would answer them. And he'd be easy. It was part of him being Sephardic, but he really did a service to that community by being more lenient and easier. And in his later years politically, he got to be kind of hard edged, but in his younger years, he was very flexible, and he famously allied, the Sephardic religious world, Shas, with a left-wing government, which now never happens, right? In the current configuration of parties, but yeah, the more you know, the more you can be flexible. There's some way. Sometimes people put it that way, and the more you're just learning. In the religious world, the more people are just starting out is usually when they're more rigid because they want to do everything according to the letter. They don't realize how much flexibility there is in it. Let's do one more, and then we'll stop, and then next week we'll come to the great story. So please continue, David, if you don't mind. 91.
To accommodate his many disciples, Rabbi Eliezer's house of study was almost as large as an arena, and in it there was a stone that was reserved for him to sit on. Once Rabbi Joshua came in and began kissing the stone and saying, "The stone is like Mount Sinai, and he who sits on it is like the Ark of the Covenant."
And so we know Rabbi Joshua is no slouch either, and is one of the great rabbis. So it just gives one a sense of how great Eliezer's Torah is. Just an incredible fountain of all the others just are amazed at his powers. And so we've built him up, and next time we'll see how his powers also lead to disaster. And so I'll leave everybody on that cliffhanger, and we'll come back to it next week.
Very good.
Okay.
Hey, thank you.
Actually, you know what? I will get back to you because next week, I remember now is Tisha B'Av. And there is a tradition on Tisha B'Av to only study texts related to mourning. So I'll have to look and see if this is sad enough for us to study. But I'll get back to everyone and let everyone know.